Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents. We're on the third installment of the Halloween story with two stories. There is some talk about death and spookiness, so I would be cautious with the easily spooked. The first story is about not letting anything get in the way of a meeting. And the second story tells of a sighting made from scratch. Okay, let's begin. Dead or alive? In the following case, the ghost kept its promise to appear, doing so in all appearances in spite of great obstacles. The incident is reported in Mr. W. T. Steed's Real Ghost Stories, pages 205 to 208. The following incident occurred to me some years ago, and all the details can be substantiated. The date was August 26th, 1867 at midnight. I was then residing in the neighborhood of Hull, and held an appointment under the Crown which necessitated my repairing there every day for a few hours of duty. My berth was almost sinecure, and I had for some time been engaged to a young North Country heiress, it being understood that on our marriage I should take her name and stand for the country, or rather for one of its divisions. For her sake I had to break off a love affair, not of the most reputable order, with a girl in Hull. I will call her Louise. She was young, beautiful, and devoted to me. On the night of the 26th of August, we took our last walk together, and a few minutes before midnight paused on a wooden bridge running across some kind of canal locally termed a drain. We paused on the bridge, listening to the swirling of the current against the wooden piles, and waiting for the stroke of midnight to part forever. In the few minutes' interval, she repeated, sotto voce, Longfellow's Bridge, the words of which, I stood on the bridge at midnight, seemed terribly appropriate. After nearly 25 years, I can never hear that piece recited without feeling a deadly chill and the whole scene of two souls in agony again rising before me. Well, midnight struck and we parted. But Louise said, "Grant me one favor, the only one that I shall ever ask of you on this earth. Promise to meet me here 12 months from tonight at this very same hour." I demurred at first, thinking it would be bad for both of us, and only reopen partially healed wounds. At last, however, I consented, saying, "Well, I will come if I am alive." But she said, "Say alive or dead." I said, "Very well, then we will meet, dead or alive." The next year I was on the spot a few minutes before the time, and punctual to the stroke of midnight, Louise arrived. By this time, I had begun to regret the arrangement I had made, but it was too solemn of a nature to put aside. I therefore kept the appointment, but said that I did not care to renew the compact. Louise, however, persuaded me to renew it for one more year, and I consented, much against my will, and we again left each other, repeating the same formula, dead or alive. The next year passed rapidly until the first week in July, when I was shot dangerously in the thigh by a fisherman of Hull named Thomas Piles, a reputed smuggler. A party of 4 of us had hired his tun-tun yawl to go yachting around the Yorkshire coast and amuse ourselves by shooting seabirds amongst the millions of them at Flamborough Head. The 3rd or 4th day out, I was shot in the right thigh by the skipper Piles, and the day after, 1¼ ounce of No. 2 shot were cut from there by the Coast Guard surgeon at Bridlington Quay, whose name I forget for the moment, assisted by Dr. Alexander Mackey at the Black Lion Hotel. The affair was in all the papers at the time, about a column of it appearing in the Hull's Eastern Morning News. As soon as I was able to be moved around, 2 or 3 weeks, I was taken home, where Dr. Melbourne King of Hull attended me. The day, and the night, the 26th of August, came. I was then unable to walk without crutches, and only for a short distance, so I had to be wheeled about in a bath chair. The distance to the trysting place being rather long, and the time and the circumstances being very peculiar, I did not avail myself of the services of my usual attendant, but specially retained an old servant of the family who frequently did confidential commissions for me, and who knew Miss Louise well. We set forth without the beat of drum, and arrived at the bridge about a few minutes to midnight. I remember that it was a brilliant starlit night, but I do not think that there was any moon, at all events at that hour. Old Bob, as he was affectionately called, wheeled me to the bridge, helped me out of the bath chair, and gave me my crutch. I walked onto the bridge and leaned my back against the white-painted rail top, then lit my briar root and had a comfortable smoke. I was very much annoyed that I had allowed myself to be persuaded to come a second time, and determined to tell Louise positively that this should be our last meeting. Besides now, I did not consider it fair to Miss K, with whom I was again negotiating. So if anything, I was in a rather sulky frame of mind that I waited for Louise. Just as the quarter before the hour began to chime, I distinctly heard the clink-clink of little brass heels, which she always wore, sounding on the long flagged causeway, leading for 200 yards up to the bridge. As she got nearer, I could see her pass lamp after lamp in the rapid succession, while the strokes of the large clock at Hull resounded through the still night. At last the patter-patter of the tiny feet sounded on the woodwork of the bridge, and I saw her distinctly pass under the lamp beside me. When she got close to me, I saw that she neither had hat nor cape on, and concluded that she had taken a cab at the further end of the flagged causeway, and, it being a very warm night, had left her wraps in the cab, and for the purposes of effect, had come the short distance in an evening dress. Clink, clink went the brass heels, and she seemed about passing me, when I suddenly, urged by an impulse of affection, stretched out my arms to receive her. She passed through them, intangible, impalpable, and as she looked at me, I distinctly saw her lips move and form the words, "Dead or alive?" I even heard the words, but not with my outward ears, with something else, some other sense, what, I know not. I felt startled, surprised, but not afraid, until a moment afterwards, when I felt, but could not see, some other presence following her. I could feel, though I could not hear, the heavy, clumsy thud of feet following her, and my blood seemed to turn to ice. Recovering myself with an effort, I shouted out to old Bob, who was safely ensconced with the bath chair in a nook around the corner. "Bob, who passed you just now?" In an instant, the old Yorkshire man was by my side. "Ne'er a one passed me, sir." "Nonsense, Bob," I replied. "I told you that I was coming to meet Miss Louise, and she had just passed me on the bridge and must have passed you, because there is nowhere else she could go. You don't mean to tell me that you didn't see her?" The old man replied solemnly, "Maister Rab, there's something uncanny about it. I heerd her come on the bridge and off it, and I knaw them clickety heels anywhere. But I'm dommed, sir, if she passed me. I'm thinking we'd better gang." And gang we did. And it was the small hours of the morning, getting daylight, before we left off, talking over the affair, and went to bed. The next day I made inquiries from Louise's family about her, and ascertained that she had died in Liverpool 3 months previously, being apparently delirious for a few hours before her death, and our parting compact evidently weighing on her mind, as she kept repeating, "Dead or alive? Shall I be there?" to the utter bewilderment of her friends, who could not divine her meaning, being, of course, entirely unaware of our agreement. The end. And story number 2, The Scratch on the Cheek. The case appeared in the proceedings of the American Society of Phantoms and Romance, and the high character of the witnesses was vouched for by Dr. Hodgson and Professor Royce. It is to the following effect. January 11th, 1888. Sir, Replying to your recently published request for actual occurrences of physical phenomena, I respectfully submit the following remarkable occurrence to the consideration of your distinguished society, with the assurance that the event made more powerful impression upon my mind than the combined incidents of my whole life. I was never in better health or possessed a clearer mind than at the time that the incident occurred. In 1867, my only sister, a young lady of 18 years, died suddenly of cholera in St. Louis, Missouri. My attachment to her was very strong, and the blow was a severe one for me. A year or so after her death, I became a commercial traveler, and it was in 1876, while on one of my western trips, that the event occurred. I had drummed the city of St. Joseph, Missouri, and had gone to my room at the Pacific House to send in my orders, which were unusually large ones. So I was in a very happy frame of mind indeed. My thoughts, of course, were about these orders, knowing how pleased my house would be at my success. I had not been thinking of my late sister, or in any manner reflecting on the past. The hour was high noon, and the sun was shining cheerfully into my room. While busy smoking a cigar and writing out my orders, I suddenly became conscious that someone was sitting on my left, with one arm resting on the table. Quick as a flash I turned, and distinctly saw the form of my dead sister, and for a brief second or two looked her squarely in the face. And so sure was I that it was she, that I sprang forward in delight, calling her by name, and as I did so, the apparition instantly vanished. Naturally, I was startled and dumbfounded, almost doubting my senses. But the cigar in my mouth and pen in hand, with ink still moist on my letter, I satisfied myself that I had not been dreaming and was still awake. I was near enough to touch her, had it been physically possible, and noted her features, expression, and details of her dress, etc. She appeared as if she were alive. Her eyes looked kindly and perfectly naturally into mine. Her skin was so perfectly lifelike that I could see the glow or moisture in the surface, and, on the whole, there was no change in her appearance from when she was alive. Now comes the most remarkable confirmation of my statement, which cannot be doubted by those who know what I state actually occurred. This visitation, or whatever you may want to call it, so impressed me that I took the next train home, and in the presence of my parents and others I related what had occurred. My father, a man of rare good sense and very practical, was inclined to ridicule me, as he saw how earnestly I believed what I stated. But he too was amazed, later on, when I told them of the bright red line or scratch on the right-hand side of my sister's face, which I distinctly had seen. When I mentioned this, my mother rose trembling to her feet and nearly fainted away, and as soon as she had sufficiently recovered her self-possession, with tears streaming down her face, she exclaimed that I had indeed seen my sister, as no living mortal but herself was aware of that scratch, which she had made while doing some little act of kindness after my sister's death. She said she remembered how well pained she was to think that she should have, unintentionally, marred the features of her dead daughter, and that, unknown to all, she had carefully obliterated all traces of the slight scratch with the help of powder, etc., and that she had never mentioned it to a human being from that day to this. Yet I saw the scratch as bright as if just made. Confirmatory statements were obtained from the narrator's father and brother, his mother having died in the interval. The end. Spooky, huh? I love these holiday stories, and I love that some of the old language is still used in these. Sinecure, sotto voce, and even the drummer as someone going around selling stuff. I'm enjoying these and look forward to bringing you more, and if you want something else creepy, I suggest going over to Tabby Tabby Pod and listening to Ethan tell you about creepy monsters from the Philippines. Thank you, happy Halloween, and good night.